Shifting gears here a little bit. I mean, there's a segment of our country that puts these efforts, whether it's Black History education or DEI initiatives in the corporate environment, that put all of these efforts in a so-called woke bucket. And
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you say this before, but this idea, like what's going on, is essentially a backlash, and there've been backlashes throughout history. I wonder, do you think there's anything special about the backlash that we're seeing now? Do you think it has any staying power?
It's special in the fact that it's happening now. Like, this is what's happening in our particular moment in our lives.
Right, but compared to others, is there anything else that kind of stands out about it? Does it have any staying power in terms of being enshrined in policy?
I mean, it is enshrined in policy already. We've already seen the voting legislation and the other kinds of things that are going on with suppression of information and people's access to teach, ability to teach, on subject matter that touches upon thorny issues. All that is already policy. So, but I don't know like what the ultimate outcome of this will be, but it just will, I think it's sufficient to say that it fits the pattern, of previous periods that we've been in, where we've seen these kind of dynamics. And I think that's also one of the things that we wanted to do with the report, is kind of look at what you would see if you took what appears to be a contemporary problem and spread your analysis over 5 or 6 or 7 decades. At that point, the scale, changes and things begin to look, familiar. The patterns begin to look familiar. And that's one of the things that we were hoping to do with those reports.
Yeah. Some of these issues are already shaping up to be themes for the 2024 election cycle. I wonder, how should, just putting on your Dean of Journalism school hat on, how should journalists approach their work in an era where race is such a major theme or undercurrent for a lot of issues?
I think that there are, if I were to take it from that subject to, a different one, if we were talking about climate, people think that, reporting about climate only entails, heat waves and floods, or hurricanes, like the most obvious elements of disaster. But in fact, if you're reporting about climate, you were talking about the economy, you were talking about food, you were talking about labor and labor conditions, you were talking about urban planning, you're talking about government budgets, we're talking a whole array of things that if you are covering those subjects as a journalist, you need to be knowledgeable about climate and climate change. It works in the same sort of way. We have race so thoroughly baked into so many different aspects of American life that, if you are covering healthcare, you need to be cognizant, of these issues. If you are covering housing, you need to be cognizant of these. If you're covering criminal justice, you really need to be cognizant of these issues, or education. So you can't extract yourself from the implications of this subject in all these different facets of American life. And so as we look at the 2024 election, there are lots of instances, especially around the debates over immigration, and especially around the debates over voter access and all these things that are kind of among the most hot button issues in American life right now. And so I think those are things that students should be prepared to think about, and that journalists should be equipping themselves to think about as they go out and do their work.
Yeah. And staying on the 2024 topic, just in terms of election coverage, is there anything that you hope to see journalists writ large do differently, with the next election compared to how they covered the 2020 election?
Well, I think that we're operating in a disinformation ecosystem, which is not new. This has been the case for some years now. And my hope is that outlets have become more sophisticated in responding to, and operating in that environment, and thinking about how they respond to disinformation initiatives and, the various sorts of challenges that come with the landscape.